Ladies and gentlemen, November 16th of 2016, James Berry broke Melanie Eam's heart. And so she, a few hours later, came to his home and stabbed him right above his heart, in his chest. Stabbed him. And she did it. And then immediately after she did it, she fled. And defense counsel stated that you flee for two reasons. Guilt, which she absolutely felt the guilt for having stabbed her boyfriend, James Berry. And for fear. Not fear of God hand, but fear of being held responsible for her actions. And that is why in the wee hours of the morning, she got in her car, banged on her, went to her parents' house in a rush, realizes they're not there. But where are the police going to come? They're going to come here. I have to get in the car, grab a phone at Walmart, and book it. And on the way, I'm going to stop at 2 ATMs. I'm going to get money because I'm going all the way to Maryland. And she did that out of her guilt and out of her fear. Her fear of being held responsible, her fear of being caught. That is why she did that. She was not afraid of God hand. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that God hand killed James Berry. No evidence. Defense counsel talks, and we'll talk first about this statement. That Detective Oliver rushes to conclusion. He just goes in there and is determined that he's not going to listen to her. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not under arrest. Don't you feel, and these are the words of Detective Oliver before Miss Eam confesses to killing James Berry. Don't you feel like you have to kind of explain something to me? You need an explanation of what happened, your side of the story. And then he asks the circumstances. He does not go in there. That's how he starts the conversation with her. And during that conversation, he does not jump to the conclusion of premeditation. He doesn't say, well, I know your phone was there. I know from the surveillance stills that are in evidence, the surveillance videos that shows 11:23 to, 12:23 to about 12:55, half an hour time frame that Miss Eam is in front of the residence, at the residence, and in the time period that she contemplates going in there, the time period that includes her arguing with James, and the time period that includes stabbing. That's been proven by evidence. The Detective Oliver, that we admitted through Detective Oliver, and the evidence that Detective Oliver saw. But when he goes into that statement with Miss Eam, he asks her, he didn't bring the knife. I don't want to believe that you brought the knife there. Where'd you get it? In the kitchen, in the drawer. These are her words. This is not her acquiescing to Detective Oliver. What she says, and you can tell from the text message that Mr. Scott went over with you, do you know what he said to me? He said he didn't love me. He had the audacity in her mind to break up with him, to break up with her, not in person, but over not even real text messages, but a lead chat. Really? You're going to break up with me in a lead chat? And ladies and gentlemen, defense counsel wants to say, this is on and off again all the time. It's fine. She's not going to get upset by it. You can see how upset she is. You can see how upset she is in the text messages, and you know that what she says in that statement, that her heart, when he broke up with her, her heart felt like it was going to stop. So she stopped his. Her words, her heart felt like it was going to stop. Because this was not the first time he'd broken up with her. And now he has the audacity to do it in a lead chat. So she tells Detective Oliver in that statement of her own details, where she got the knife, the fact that it was from the drawer, that James ran off. She didn't chase him, but James ran off. Trying to save his own life, ran off for help. And that's when he started screaming to Jeff, and that's when she hustled out. And she went to her parents, stopped at Walmart. Detective Oliver doesn't just talk about that. He asks her, was it self-defense? Was it accidental? And what he asked her is if anyone else was there. And a resounding no comes from Miss Eam. No. Not during that statement at all does she hint, suggest, or mention that anyone else did this. That she saw her boyfriend get stabbed and murdered in front of her. Never once. Because that's not what happened, ladies and gentlemen. She is the one who stabbed him. She is the one who killed him. And ladies and gentlemen, you've got an instruction on as to statement. There were no threats, no promises to Miss Eam. She was not in custody, so she's not entitled to Miranda. She's not entitled to an attorney. It was very clear, Detective Oliver, from his actions with Miss Eam and his actions prior to the Maryland police. Do not arrest her. Do not detain her. You are not under arrest. I am leaving today. You will stay here. Are you okay? Is it okay to leave you here? He was genuinely concerned about her, and you can tell from his tone, and you can tell from the fact that Mr. Eam testified himself that he expressed to Detective Oliver when he saw her, I'm concerned about my daughter. And you heard that through Detective Oliver's interview. And the defendant, in her own words, when you consider if there's any threats or pressure, very comfortable. That's what she said. And when the Maryland police come to her and they ask her if she's okay, not once does she say, I saw my boyfriend get stabbed and murdered in front of me. Not once. When Detective Oliver gets there, she never says, Guy killed James right in front of me. Because it didn't happen. You look to her actions, her fleeing the scene, so fast she didn't even pick up her phone. Getting out of there as quick as she can. Fled from her parents' house because she knows that's where the police will look for her. And that's where they did look for her. And so she fled to Maryland, early morning hours. And ATM withdrawals, SunPass, you can see on her photographs in the SunPass records. And you looked her, in addition to those statements, her other admissions. When do I go in for questioning? When they come up, are you okay? I saw someone get murdered right in front of my eyes. The love of my life got murdered in front of me. Please, I want to tell someone. Instead, when do I go in for questioning? My family told me to turn myself in. And the only reason her family would tell her to turn herself in is if she told her family, I killed my boyfriend. Not, I witnessed someone. You told your family members, ladies and gentlemen, common sense. If you tell your family members, I saw someone get murdered in front of me. Your family members are going to say, go to the police, call 911, do something. They're not going to say turn yourself in. They're going to say turn yourself in if you tell them that you killed someone. Ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no evidence. And the evidence before you is what you heard from the witness stand and what has been entered into evidence. That is the evidence you're to consider. There is absolutely no evidence that Guy Hand did this. None. It is imaginary doubt. Reasonable doubt is not a speculative, forced, imaginary doubt. Possible doubt. That's not what reasonable doubt is. There is absolutely no evidence of any conflict between Guy Hand and James Barrett. Not that day, not that night, not ever. From any witness on that stand, questioned by myself, Mr. Scott, or Mr. Laird. Nothing. The only words and testimony that you have before you is that they had a great relationship and that Guy Hand told you he loved him. And you saw the emotion in his eyes when he said that. That was true emotion. Stepson, whatever. He's in a significant relationship with this son, with James Barry's mother. And there's absolutely no tension. They've lived in homes together before. This is the second time that they're living in a house together. They have a positive, significant relationship, and that is all you have heard. So, Defense counsel says, well, Guy Hand is the one banging on the table, telling everyone, Melanie did it, Melanie did it. There's absolutely no evidence of that. Guy Hand testified? Never heard him say that. Detective Oliver, well, when you got there, Melanie Eam is all Mr. Hand could say, beginning and end of the statement. That never came out in evidence. What came out in evidence is once they're there and they're figuring it out, they know it. Melanie Eam is not there. Melanie Eam's phone is there, ladies and gentlemen. Defense counsel, in order for you to believe that Guy Hand is the real murderer, you have to believe either A, that he is a magician better than Houdini, or that Nicola and Jeff are lying on his behalf. And defense counsel has made a large point to say that because Mr. Hand is a certified butcher, so that at some point in his life he had an occupation that involved cutting meat, he must be a murderer. Ladies and gentlemen, because someone is a butcher does not make them a murderer. To rely on that, rely on the fact that he knows the brand of his knife because he's had it as a butcher, because he utilizes it and knows that it's a white butcher knife, the Dexter brand, because someone knows that the knife in their kitchen is Wusthof, does not make them a murderer. Because they are certified and they had a job in that thing does not make them a murderer. That defies common sense for you to jump to that conclusion. That is speculative doubt. And if so, ladies and gentlemen, if you think, oh, he's a butcher, he must have stabbed James. He's a certified butcher who's, according to Mr. Lair, great at his job. James would not have had all of those defensive wounds, all of those fighting that you saw on the back, that you saw all over his hands, on his abdomen, on his leg. James Berry was 129 pounds. You have seen Miss Eam in court, you have seen her small frame. James Berry was able to fight his attacker. He was able to fight with all of his life that he had left. He was able to try to grab that knife, and his body is moving all around. He's trying to save himself. And the only way that he can do that is because Miss Eam is framed herself. In addition to believing that, you'd also have to believe that Magician Guy, in time frame, the same time James is able to stumble into that hallway from the kitchen, that you see the blood splatter in that hallway, the same small amount of time he was able to go from where he is injured to calling for Jeff, you have to believe that Guy is able to wash off all of the blood from his body, hop into bed, dispose of any bloody clothing, hop into bed where there is no blood in that room entirely, let alone in that bed. And that not only that, he has to pretend to be asleep so that when they're woken up, he can pretend like he was sleeping and not leave any blood. All within seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, that defies all common sense. There is absolutely no evidence to support that. If he's going to do this, the magician, why not dispose of the knife? No, ladies and gentlemen. And if that were true, if this scenario of Guy Hand, of this speculative, imaginary forced out were true, Melanie Eam is standing right there. And she does nothing. She doesn't scream. She just lets the love of her life get stabbed and killed in front of her. Doesn't scream for help. That's because it didn't happen like that. When a friend, when the love of your life, when a stranger is injured in front of you, you scream help. And that is what Jeff did as soon as he saw James. Melanie is the one who stabbed Guy Hand. And The other way is that either Nicola and Jeff are lying for Guy Hand. That's just inconsistent. Every piece of evidence you before you. Miss Berry is devastated by her son's loss. That now she would lie for her boyfriend just so that she could keep that boyfriend? That's what defense counsel said. Well, she could just be wanting to believe this truth because she doesn't want to lose a boyfriend. Her son. She's not going to hold on to a boyfriend just because, well, she's already lost a son. She might as well hold on to the murdering boyfriend. That's, ladies and gentlemen, that defies all common sense. Her testimony was unimpeached, clear that Guy Hand woke up at the same time, left the bedroom right in front of her, that he was not bloody, and defense counsel wanted to talk to you about Jeff. Jeff has all of a sudden, that Jeff is all of a sudden come up with this, Guy opens the door. That he, all of a sudden, now that he's heard the defense, you heard Mr. Lair ask him, well, now you know that we're going to say Guy did it, and all of a sudden you're saying open his door. And he confronts him with that first statement to police. I don't remember being asked that question, I don't know. And I went up and I said, did you write 3 days later a statement for your own self? Not because police told you to, but on your own. And I showed him that statement. And what did he say? I noticed Guy, Nicola's boyfriend, open his door. He's not making this up. It's a prior consistent statement before he even met with anyone. And defense counsel has said that Guy Hand must have done it because he did CPR wrong. Because he was at work. And at work, like many professions do, they have minimal CPR training. And that minimal CPR training, use your common sense, is so that you can help someone before the paramedics or the police get there. Someone with more extensive medical training. I asked Mr. Hand, do you have any extensive medical training? No, he does not. He, in this moment, is trying to help James as best he can. As best he can. And he moves him from a slouched position that, ladies and gentlemen, common sense, anyone, even if you don't know CPR, knows that you can't do it when someone's in a slouched position. So he sees he's next to the bed, I'll move him on the bed. I think that will help. Yes, it's not the best way to do it. He's saying they told me to put him on a flat surface. I thought that was a flat surface. He's listening to the dispatcher. He's doing what he remembers. Ladies and gentlemen, when people take those classes, they take them, as he said, on a dummy or a live friend. To say that in a traumatic, startling event, such as seeing your girlfriend's son stabbed and bleeding profusely from his chest and neck, that you're going to act as the book says? Ladies and gentlemen, he did the best he could. And yes, at that point, he's not performing fake CPR. Holding that wound as he described, and you saw how emotional he got, as blood is gushing out of that, because you know from the medical examiner where all the blood is. It's all in the chest. And so as he's pushing down the chest, all that blood is coming up and up. He's not faking CPR. Absolutely not. Doing CPR on an actual person is much different than the dummy that you keep in those classes. And because Deputy Mosley, an officer for numerous years, knows to move him to the ground, does not negate the fact that Guy was doing his best. He was doing his best, and they were trying to get help there immediately. Calling for 911. Why is 911 not getting here? And ladies and gentlemen, people respond differently in traumatic experiences. You cannot, in your normal, at this state, in normal, how would I react in this circumstance? He sees an individual dying, dies in his arms. He is doing the best he can. Yes. In that startling event, he picked up the knife. He's not thinking about it. Told you he's not thinking about it. I'm barefoot. I've just seen someone die in front of me. I don't want anyone else to get hurt. He's not thinking of, oh, well, I've seen, which there's no evidence that he watches all these CSI shows or all this stuff that defense attorney wants you to speculate on, but that he's going to think, oh, well, I think this is bad. He's trying to prevent any other harm in this immediate moment. And he doesn't take it out. First of all, the deputies are there, and you know that because you heard Sergeant Silver say, when I came in, I didn't see the knife. When I do the sweep, I see the knife. So Guy Hand, this master criminal, is going to pick up the murder weapon and move it right in front of the police officers. The police officers are responding as they should to the immediate need to help the person. Guy Hand isn't trying to be tricky when he walks out. The police are there. He says when they're directing me out of the room, it's there, we're stepping over it, I move it. I put it there. I tell them where it is. He's not hiding it. And yes, he wipes off his hand. But ladies and gentlemen, as I showed you in the photographs, and you'll get them, so we're not going to go through them again. But when I spoke to Mr. Hand and I went over the pictures, you could still see blood on his hands. He's not washing his hands like this. What he does, and using common sense, you were in South Florida, it's freezing cold, you have a sweatshirt on, and a mosquito. In Loxahatchee, everyone knows there's mosquitoes, anything west of Military, west of Jog. The mosquito goes to his face, and what he does is he goes like this to probably kill a mosquito, which is what he told you he did, and then he looks at his hands, because he's probably not looking at them, because this is a startling, traumatic event, and he sees that he has blood on his hands, blood now all over his face. So a water that a police officer gave him to drink, he splashes a little on him. He's not hiding this blood. And even if defense wants you to say, well, that was crucial evidence he's getting rid of. First of all, he's still holding his hands, and he tells them, I washed my hands, I'm sorry, in the statement. And even if that DNA was going to be miraculous, what that DNA would have said, it was James' blood on Guy's hand. So the blood either would have been overwhelming or it would have had Guy's DNA. That doesn't prove a reasonable doubt as to anything, and it certainly doesn't say that Guy Hand is a murderer. And there is absolutely no evidence from that witness stand. Defense counsel wants you to speculate on pictures. Well, it looks like there's an old cut, so he wants you to believe it's a new cut because there's blood on it. You heard from the crime scene investigator who documents injuries, and Neil Zielinski told you there were no cuts to Guy Hand. So Mr. Lair wants you to speculate as to a photo and examine it yourself, a photograph, and say, oh, he must have had an injury, he must have been the person who cut. And defense counsel also says that Detective Oliver threw away evidence, which is absolutely not true. He went on even beyond the statements and got further evidence, bank records, SunPass information, surveillance video. He's not throwing away this evidence. That DNA, the small portion that was not James, that is on the gear shift and on Melanie's clothing, there was, first of all, not enough DNA to compare to anyone. So that's speculative doubt. And even if, and ladies and gentlemen, use your common sense, you know whose DNA that is. That small fraction is Melanie Eam's, because it's her shirt and her car, her gear shift that she admitted to driving, and when she got into that car, ladies and gentlemen, defense counsel wants you to say that there should, if she's stabbing someone, that there's going to be all this blood on her. It's not supported by the evidence. What you look to is the sleeve of the hand that would hold the knife. Right there, that would be closest to the knife and the blood. That is where James Berry's DNA is. Not from splatter, from standing near this incident. It is right there. As she stabbed him right above the heart, there is blood right there. And as she's stabbing him, that is where the blood will be. Because her hand will be closest to there, the knife and the blade will be closest to there. And ladies and gentlemen, the knife. Defense counsel wants you to say, well, the knife, that is James Berry's blood on the knife. And James Berry's blood would have overwhelmed anything else. And even if DNA doesn't prove when it was left there, you know that this was a knife that was used by anyone. So the fact that Guy Hand moved the knife does not take away from the fact that it wouldn't have mattered in regards to processing. Melanie Eam's phone. wasn't swabbed, wasn't fingerprinted. Melanie Eam's email address is on that download you heard from Detective Cunningham. Melanie Eam's father testified to you that that looked like her phone. No one else in that house owned that phone. That's her phone. You saw from the text messages James Berry calling her Melanie. And in regards to the DNA evidence, defense made it a large point to say that Detective Oliver said that the lab decides that. That's not what he said. That is not the evidence that came from there. And I ask you to rely on the evidence that you remember, not on our arguments, not on mine, not on defense's. What he said was that I consult with them, that it's decided, I make submissions, and the items, such as the items that are going to be blood, that show that Melanie Eam, on her hands, where she's touching the gear shift as she's getting in the car, because she has stabbed someone, that area of blood will be there. And that is consistent with the physical evidence you see. That knife on the counter, defense counsel wants you, because it's near a towel, not it's underneath the towel, it's adjacent to a towel. That guy hand must have wiped it down, cleaned it up. There is no blood on that towel. There is no blood on that counter. Testimony, defense counsel makes this big point. Miss Berry's wearing earplugs. First of all, the testimony that came from that stand is guy hand says, I don't know, when earplugs. Miss Berry's never asked if she's wearing earplugs. And even if she is, it doesn't matter. Because when people are screaming for help, they're going to hear it through the earplugs, and that's what happened. Even if she was wearing earplugs, which there's no evidence she was, it doesn't make a difference to the case as to whether or not Melanie Eam is the one who killed James Berry. Mr. Guy Hand did not flee the scene. He stayed there. He rendered aid to James. He called for help. He cooperated with police fully. Gave a statement, gave his DNA, let them take pictures, was honest about the fact that he had wiped part of his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, you know from the testimony, you know from the defendant's phone being found on scene, you know from her flight and the circumstances of her flight, fleeing the scene, fleeing her home, fleeing to Maryland. You know that she is the person who killed James. You know that from the DNA on her sleeve where she held the knife, from her hands when she got into that car on the gear shift and on that driver door area, the one that is octillion, and quintillion. Octillion, we're talking 27 zeros. It is James Berry's blood. You know that she did it, and you know that she did it not because of just that circumstantial evidence, which proves it, but you know from her own words when said, "How did this happen?" And she said, "Do you know what he said to me? He said he didn't love me. Broke up with me in a leave chat and text messages." Ladies and gentlemen, the state has proven that she committed second-degree murder with a weapon. We don't have to show just because she said, "I didn't know he was going to die." The state does not have to prove that she had an intent to kill. But when you take a butcher knife to someone, aim it at their chest, aim it above their heart, that's a depraved mind. And she did it out of hatred, ill will, and spite towards James, a person who had broken her heart. So the state asks that you find her guilty of second-degree murder with a weapon. Thank you very much for your time.